Today we're going to be talking about the Faylene murder case. And as you all know, Doug, her husband, got 5 years for manslaughter. He really got 10 years, but he got out in 5. This is the mystery. This is the coincidence. There was a fall off a cliff. There was a drowning in a bathtub. And then there was the cryptic letters left behind by Faylene. But in those cryptic letters, there was visions. She was having visions. She was having plots. She was stating plots. She was having desires to go beyond the veil. She was writing all of these musings for the benefit of her family. And this script sounded like the screenwriter was Doug Grant himself. In her cryptic writings, she professed that Doug said this, Doug wanted this, Doug suggested this. Was Doug Grant playing with a highly religious person like Faylene Grant? Was he playing with her devout, committal to the religion of LDS? She had been a devout Mormon her whole life. Now she's 35 years old, and she's not with us because a disastrous 3-day period. That same 3-day period that she had fallen off a cliff, she had drowned in a bathtub, and luckily there was cryptic messages and letters left strewn all around the house. She had left messages because she knew she was going to die. But who, I ask you, knew she was going to die too? Would you speculate like Juan Martinez did, that Doug Grant was suggesting her death over and over, manipulating her to make her believe that her real place in this world was beyond the veil? Was that why in her letters, in those musings, she mentioned that Doug told me this, Doug shared this with me, Doug suggested this? All the way through it, it wasn't saying that religion was calling me, that my higher power wasn't calling me. It was suggesting that Doug was putting all these thoughts into Faylene's head. Juan Martinez, the same prosecutor in Maricopa County, Arizona, did not treat Doug very kindly. He saw through those musings of Faylene. He saw all the suggestions. He saw Doug's name. And even when Doug's name wasn't in the letters, he saw the suggestions were someone else's, not from some immortal place, from a mortal being named Doug Grant. What happened? What happened that a man would want his 35-year-old wife, beautiful, strikingly beautiful, dead? What was in his life? Oh no, he had cheated in his first marriage with her, and she had gone to temple, and she decided to remarry him. So it couldn't be that he was cheating again in Faylene's mind. No. She had that greater purpose beyond the veil, remember. But behind the scenes, this screenwriter had written in a new person, and that was Hillary DeWitt, the same person that he was having a relationship before their second marriage. He had written her in his little skit. So Hillary and him started seeing each other right after Faylene had passed on from drowning in the tub. But the doctor from up in Utah, where they had hiked in that sacred area where Faylene wanted to honor her religion by all these religious and spiritual places, the doctor up in that area said, no, this wasn't a 60-foot cliff fall. She would have lacerations. She would have broken bones. There is no, and most people would not live through such a fall. So they were suspicious up in Utah that this fall was not even something that took place. But who is to say? Because Doug was the only witness, and Doug is the one that reported this. When she left that hospital that day in pretty good repair, the doctor gave her muscle relaxants, painkillers, and sent her home to rest. But 3 days later, she is found drowned in the bathtub. Now, the autopsy blames it on Ambien, the sleeping pill that Doug's friend had prescribed for Faylene. But when Doug's friend, his name happens to be Chad, prescribed this medicine, Ambien, he said to Doug, do not fill this prescription. Do not do anything with this prescription. Let her other medicines take the course, and let's see how she does on the other medicines. Well, Doug didn't follow his friend Chad's advice. Oh, in talking about Chad, the other Chad, do you hear something similar? Was the other Chad telling Tammy she had a greater place? Or was he, in our opinion, telling the outside world, other than Tammy, that she had a greater place? It's kind of a flip-flop. In this case, Doug was telling Faylene herself that she had a much greater place to go to, and that her mission was to go beyond the veil, not to be one of us, just mortal people that never leave until we're taken. No, she had a greater purpose beyond the veil, as far as Doug was telling her. Chad was telling everybody else that Tammy had a greater purpose and that her mission was beyond the veil. Oh, isn't that sad? We got two men that are having two mistresses, and there's a common denominator. Chad's telling the world that his wife is going to be leaving him. Doug's telling his wife that she will be leaving him. From what the musings, from what the cryptic messages that Faylene left behind. Now here we go. We're here, and we got Juan Martinez, the same attorney that ramrodded Jodi Arias in her trial. He knew that she wanted to kill Travis before she got there. He knew it was all premeditated. He knew that everything she did was on purpose, that there was no instance when she had lost her mind and savagely killed him. And in this case, he knew that Doug had infiltrated Faylene's very devout religious mind to the point that she was believing her husband. And she really probably thought her duty. But I don't think she thought to drown herself. I think that thought came from someone else. When he heard that she was going to be taking a bath, he said to himself, oh, she's got all kinds of drugs. I'm going to feed her some. And he fed her those Ambien. This is my opinion. And it will always be my opinion. That she took the Ambien sleeping pills that Doug had filled against Chad White's orders not to fill the Ambien. He fed them to her. And she died later that day in the hospital. When Doug called, when he reached out for help, he didn't call 911 like the rest of us would. He called Chad White. And he kept saying to Chad, I don't dare to call 911. I don't dare to call 911. Why, may I ask you, that a husband that sees his wife failing right in front of him wouldn't pick up the phone and call 911. Instead, he calls the man, his friend, that had prescribed her Ambien less than 3 days before. So here we are, people, most beautiful people. We got another ugly story. This ugly story pertaining to Faylene Grant's death was a decade and more before Tammy Daybell's. But it has the same themes. It's got the exact same themes that both women had a much higher duty to fulfill beyond the veil. That both women had mistresses in the background wanting to fill their positions as soon as the other was gone. There's so many similarities in these two cases. I'm wondering if Chad Daybell knew of it, or did Lori Daybell educate him on it? I mean, it was a well-spread story in Gilbert, Arizona, the same town that Alex Cox had died in. Alex Cox was living in Gilbert, Arizona when he passed on. However, he passed on. So I say to you people, did Chad Daybell, did Lori Daybell know of Faylene Grant? And that is why Tammy Daybell is not with us. If so, his children need to stand by Tammy ever so more. His 5 adult children need to stand by their mother, because it is the same story. Just the screenwriters changed the character's name. The screenwriters who know how to manipulate and massage people to think that their religion and their devotion to the religion is much higher and much more valuable than living. These people are master manipulators. And sorry, Doug Grant, you were the cult leader of one. And maybe Hillary DeWitt and you were the cult leaders of one. I'm not sure. But I'll always be curious on what your part was in Tammy, in Faylene Grant's death. And I'll always wonder what part Lori had in Tammy Daybell's death. With that said, people, I'm going to close. I know you know it. I tell you all the time. There's a lot of ugly out here. Keep your faith over fear, and you'll be all set. Don't let anyone make you fearful. You see what Doug did to Faylene. He made her fear living on this earth, and somehow he took her life. And same with Chad Daybell, with Tammy Daybell. You watch out, people. There's a lot of ugly.